Let me start right here with this. Fox News breaking: Meta ends the fact-checking program. Zuckerberg vows to restore free expression on Facebook and Instagram. Now, you're thinking, wait a minute, this is Zuckerberg, the one that helped the last election go awry? Yes, it is. In fact, watch what he had to say.
We're going to get back to our roots and focus on reducing mistakes, simplifying our policies, and restoring free expression on our platforms. More specifically, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes similar to X, starting in the US.
Seems like we should have done this, like, say, 5 years ago. What do you think, Rick Green?
Yeah.
Is it the Trump effect?
Yeah, man, you're right. Every day is something else. I was doing my radio show this afternoon, and I usually go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I couldn't get to the bad and the ugly because there was so much good to report. So many things just like this. And Gene, listen, you've been throttled, you've been shadow banned, you've gone through all this just like I did.
Right.
Everybody that's on the panel tonight has had to deal with that. Something we never thought we would have to deal with in America. And Facebook was one of the worst actors on that. So this is a big change. And again, Trump hasn't even taken office yet. We talked about this one night on FlashPoint. I think a lot of this has to do with Zuckerberg. I mean, some people aren't going to like the way I say this, becoming more masculine. I mean, I literally believe something has changed with that guy from a testosterone level when he started getting in to jujitsu and hand-to-hand combat, and he became more masculine and I think became more willing to be pro-American and actually stand up for some of those things. So I know some people may discount that. I think if you talk to a guy like Rogan that has talked to him multiple times, she'd probably tell you the same thing. So anyway, it's just a big plus, but it's also just the trend of where the country's going. And he's also looking at the dollars and reading those tea leaves. So it's a big win for America and a big win for the First Amendment.
It is a big win. Pastor Hank, the only thing I wish is that could we go back and regain all of those things that we lost, all those people and those posts that we made that were true?
Yeah.
What do you think, Pastor Hank?
Well, listen, there's a long history of things that they fact-checked and said it wasn't so that has proven out. So you're right, Gene. But here's what I want to know. First and foremost, who are the fact-checkers? What was their, qualifications, their skill set? They acted like they knew everything and they knew more than truth. And I think that, Rick was mentioning that maybe he's become more of a man Zuckerbuck, like Michael Lindell calls him. I think it's probably this. I think he's scared. He is scared because he knows that he hired a bunch of people who lied on his behalf. They censored and tried to cut off our right of free speech. And I think he's backpedaling. I think it's what God said. It's a boomerang. And the best part of all, the Spirit of truth has come and is exposing these lies. And this is part of the Great Reset, and I rejoice.
I rejoice too, Pastor Hank, but Ed, what do you think? Do you think this is true, or is he just protecting his wallet?
Yeah, I think it's everything. But, there's really two ways to get anyone to do anything. It's either persuasion or force, right? So you can force someone to do something like, by the way, this happened in 2016 with Facebook while the Obama Group and Media Matters sat down with Mark Zuckerberg and forced him to do what he did when it came to fact-checking, especially during Donald Trump's first presidency. And now what you see is the market forces have actually persuaded him in a really good way to roll back these legislations or these regulations that they had inside of their company. I think it's amazing. By the way, it's probably too late, frankly, for Facebook. It may not be too late for Instagram. That's, I think, their flagship at the moment. Facebook has definitely lost a lot of market share in terms of just pure eyeballs. But I think it's just one more thing. It's one more moment to just smile about. This has been a great season of winning, and especially after the last 4 years. My goodness, it felt like we just got punched every year, every week of the year for the last 4 years, and finally it feels like we're gaining some momentum. I'll just look you in the eye, FlashPoint Army, and say, first of all, good job. This is the result of a lot of prayer, a lot of intercession, and a lot of activity on the part of God's people. So good job. And second thing, hold the line.
That's right.
Hold the line. We've got some more wins to come up, and there's other places to go. But this is all good news.
It is all good. And when we started, Tony, Facebook was a huge part of our audience. Of course, we had the television broadcast audience, which was large, but we had a huge social media audience, and primarily it was on Facebook. Well, it didn't take long for all of that we left almost. We stopped promoting Facebook. We stopped. We're still on, but we don't push it like we did at one time. Just for that reason of what Ed just described, We went to social media platforms that would not or have not done any type of censoring of that degree. So let me get your take here, Tony, from where you stand. Do you think this is the real deal, or is this like sleep with one eye closed?
Well, no, I think it's the real deal, and it is, like Rick said and you said, it's the Trump effect, but I also think we owe a deep gratitude to Elon Musk because he set the standard with X, and now you see all these companies that are following him, and they're even quoting him and saying, we're doing what X is going to do. And I think in the long run, as history tells the story, as frustrating as the last 4 years have been, we're going to be grateful at the same time for these last 4 years, because these 4 years exposed how dark it really was, how bad it had really gotten. And again, as frustrating as it was for us to live through it, we'll be telling our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, I was there. And we'll be able, I don't think we actually knew how bad it really was. But now it's been exposed, and not only is it exposed, it's been dealt with, and we'll be better for it long term.
Without a doubt. And, the people have lost trust, gentlemen, tonight on all of this. And, whether, and it really had nothing to do with your politics, whether you were left or right. It's like, if you're going to take me down, well, I'll just go somewhere where they won't take me down. And so a loss of trust has meant a loss of viewership, like Ed pointed out. They got a lot fewer eyeballs watching. X, on the other hand, since, and it was a great point there, Tony, X is increasing. Elon, it's really back like never before because of the freedom to post as it is. But it's really interesting to watch what's happened in the media world. Now, this is where I live. This is where you guys, every one of you, are in the media world as well. Watch this clip. This is the diary of a CEO, Corey Sanchez, talking about new media. Now, pay attention to the numbers that she quotes in this. Watch.
Article about CNN. This is fascinating. How many views do you think CNN got in prime time for 1 week, 3-hour segments every day, prime time for 1 week in May? What do you think?
One show.
One show, 3 hours for a week.
The cumulative of 3-hour show.
Correct.
5 million maybe? I don't know.
83,000.
That's crazy.
Lowest level of all time. Fox at the highest was 186,000. Think about what is happening right in front of us. The media is no longer actually reaching the masses because they've lost complete trust with them. In fact, 30-year-olds right now, for the first time ever, 30-year-olds have more trust in you, social media influencers, than they do the mainstream media. It's not the same for all age groups. But that is what I am seeing right in front of us, is we're like, show me what's real, because I do not trust puppets who parrot things from teleprompters. They know that you and I are having a real conversation. There's no teleprompter in sight. When you look at your notes, you look at your notes. It's real. And I think that is what I am realizing with our message. We have to be honest, because nobody trusts anybody right now.
See, I'm looking at my notes. No one's ever accused this show of being teleprompted, that's for sure. So as we go down this, with this new media that Cody Sanchez was talking about, apologies, Cody, I called you Corey. Let's kind of follow up on that, because every one of you guys are doing media that either you weren't doing 4 or 5 years ago, or you weren't doing as much as you're doing now. Tony, let's talk about that. You've got a new facility right there that you're building with media in mind. Talk about that.
Well, let's talk about something else that's interesting in the last few weeks or last few months. The NFL put primetime games on Netflix. And the viewership was off the charts. And I know some of us have issues with NFL and things that they've stood for, but you're watching even, sports that are now coming more towards social media or streaming platforms. And the beautiful thing of it is the church is already here, but we have to continue growing. I watched an old clip, I think it's mid-90s, of an old preacher named Fred Price talking about what he was paying for television in the 90s. And I thought, man, if Fred Price was alive today to know what you could do with streaming. God has made things, now there's still a price to be paid, but it's nowhere in the spectrum of what it would have been 20, 30 years ago. God's given us technology, and all of this is for the propagation of the gospel around the world. And I think that's what we need to, what it all boils down to. Everything we're doing, what Rick's doing in Texas, Pastor Hank in Nebraska, FlashPoint, Victory, and then us here in Tennessee, this is all about making Jesus famous. It's fulfilling Matthew 24, that when the gospel is preached to every nation, then the end will come. And every time another person starts a gospel-centered podcast or builds a studio or starts, a program of any sort, we're just that much closer to seeing our Lord and Savior.
Well, that's true. Good point. Good point. Pastor Hank, you kind of experienced a little bit of censoring over the years, which led to OVTV. Explain that.
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. I was praying one day because I got tired of every time I'd say something in my church to empower my congregation and the worldwide congregation that are gracious to come and listen to us every week. And I got tired of being censored by Facebook and the different ones. And so one day I was praying and the Lord spoke to me and he asked me a question. He said, why did I go many times and I would sit on a rock and preach? I would go out in a boat and preach in my home or another person's home, is because he said in those places I was not censored like I was when I went into the tabernacle or the temple, excuse me. And so it dawned on me, raise up my own. And I'm telling you, we can't be censored. We can't be canceled. But to your point of your last clip, Gene, you know what's the real deal is? There's a difference between controlled speech and free speech. The broadcasts, a lot of those, the CNNs and all those, the list goes on and on and on, they were controlling speech, and they weren't giving the right of free speech. And that's why you saw, these YouTubers and podcasters and social media craze, counter it. But that's the consequence of lying, and they're having to pay for it. And I tell you what, Gene, I love watching the great meltdown of the media that's happening right now, because they're having to reap what they sowed, as the scripture says.
Well, that's true. That's true. And we're going to see, we can have our foot in both worlds. We're definitely out there on broadcast media in a big way, but also on the alternative media, which I think is wonderful that we're there. So we're going to continue to watch. We're going to continue to expand. And thank you for staying in tune with FlashPoint and all that we're doing. All right, let's move along to some other news that happened today. Look at this from Donald Trump Jr. Greenland loves America and Trump. Incredible people with equally awesome reception. Yes, they are there in Greenland. They just want to be able to utilize some of their incredible resources that they have and allow themselves and their country. Well, here's some video, but I'm going to ask Rick about what you think about Greenland. This is Trump Force One coming in for a landing. But Rick, what do you think? What do you think about this whole Greenland stuff?
It's like we said last night on the show. I thought it was a joke initially, and I think the guy's serious. He could be our Thomas Jefferson, man. We might get a Louisiana Purchase out of this deal before it's over. I love the meme that shows Trump with his shopping cart, and it's got Greenland, Canada, and the Panama Canal on his shopping cart, and he's smiling as he's shopping.
There it is.
I don't know how far to go. Yeah, there you go. I love that thing. I got to say real quick on the Facebook thing, because I know you always were ready to move on before I am. Gene, listen.
Really?
This is what's such a miracle about this is that FlashPoint not only survived but thrived in the middle of all that censorship. And Hank said it earlier, what they were trying to do was stop the truth, and the truth will find its way out. And if people are willing to seek it out, they would find FlashPoint, wherever they had to go to get it. So I want to disagree with the last part of the clip from Cody or whoever it was you were showing. She said at the very end that, I want to make sure I got it right, she said, nobody trusts anyone anymore. I disagree with that.
That's true.
It's not true. You earn the trust, and FlashPoint has earned the trust, and everybody that's on the panel tonight, we are all out there earning our trust. That's why being intellectually honest in our programs, we're willing to say when we disagree with each other, we're willing to say whenever we got it wrong, that's what earns the trust, and I'm thankful that we've got it. I want us to keep it, and so they can try to censor us. In the end, we're going to win. I remember the first time I went into Facebook jail, it was for simply doctors sharing they had treated 5,000 COVID patients, just talking about what worked, what didn't work. The fact that they would shut down that kind of intellectual discourse and that truth in order to control their narrative from Fauci tells you how bad it was. So it's changing. Dana White's actually going to be on their board now. I don't know if you saw that, Gene, but Zuckerberg appointed him to the board. So big changes, all wins. And we just might end up with Greenland before it's all over. So what a day.
Yeah, let's, Ed, I want you to watch this clip. This is President-elect Donald J. Trump. Why do we even need Greenland? Watch.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
What do you think, Ed? Greenland, yes
first
or
of all,
no? Go ahead.
First of all, you know the rule for the next 4 years, we have to pronounce it China. It's China from now on in honor of our new president. By the way, Rick was talking about how honest we are. We're also honest with each other. It was 2 shows ago that Rick told me that my wisdom pyramid, which sits behind this plant right now, looked like a poop emoji. You remember saying that about
Yes.
my things? Now there's a plant. My wife got me this plant. It's a real plant, by the way. It's lived for about a week and a half down here, thanks to Rick's. So what were we talking about? Greenland or something like that, right?
Better, brother. Just making each other better.
It's
right?
all-
Sharpening,
it's constant
iron
improvement.
sharpening iron.
It's constant.
Meanwhile,
we were talking about
Greenland.
So back to China. The president knows what he's doing. By the way, just like Rick said, I thought this was a joke at first. When he tweeted that, I thought it was just, him being himself. What I've learned since then is the strategic national importance of this particular piece of land. By the way, since 1951, the United States has had a territorial strategic right to use it as part of our national defense. So it is inside our national defense zone. And I will just tell you that the president knows that forget Russia, forget the Middle East. Our biggest strategic threat, period, militarily, internationally, in the world right now is China. And it should tell you something that China has an interest in Greenland too. This is fascinating. Like, I never knew any of this stuff until the president tweeted that. You start to look at the countries that actually have a national interest in this small little country. The president said 45,000 people. Last I saw, 58,000 people. They literally live in 3 cities. I mean, the rest of the entire country is white, covered with ice. By the way, it was named Greenland. Eric the Red, back in the 1500s. Was exiled over to Greenland, and he tried to get a bunch of people to come with him, and he called it Greenland. I think he was trying to tell everybody how great it was, even though it's mostly ice. But there is a very significant strategic significance to this, and I think there's something to this.
Yeah. What do you think, Tony? Let me get your take.
I think this is a fascinating time to be alive, to watch these clips, hear these speeches, things that, again, it sounds like a meme at first, and now it's reality, or it looks like it's becoming reality. This is, I mean, you've heard the prophets prophesy it. I know we prayed for it. We are about to see the greatest days of our lives. I really believe it. And it's expansion, it's victory. The only thing I disagree with President Trump about is that he said that at some point we were going to get tired of winning, and I'm not tired. I want to see every day you wake up and just with this optimism, what's next? What's the next thing that's going to happen? It's a great time to be alive.
It is a great time to be alive. So we're going to continue to watch what happens between Canada and Greenland. It should be, it's all every day. It's a new day. I know that sounds pretty silly, but it's true. All right. Speaking of what's happening offshore, let me show you this clip from Caroline Levy. This is her response to Joe Biden banning offshore drilling. Watch.
This is a disgraceful decision by the Biden administration. And I say the administration because we all know Joe Biden doesn't know what's going on. This isn't him. This is the radical left environmental extremists in his administration who don't care about what's in the best interest of the American people who just reelected President Trump with a resounding mandate to drill, baby, drill. This decision, the intent behind it is to exact political revenge on the American people and on President Trump to try to slow down his administration and make it harder to implement the agenda that he campaigned on. But the good news is President Trump is going to get to work to day one. His administration will look at how we can rescind this radical order and expedite permits for drilling and for fracking to bring down the cost of living and energy in this country. That's what he campaigned on, and the American people can expect President Trump to deliver on that promise. He will not be deterred.
He will not be deterred. Rick, let me ask you a question about this. So it's a presidential. He's going to sign an executive order. Well, we know how effective executive orders are from the last time when Joe Biden took office on day one. He started doing a whole new batch. Is this anything that we need to be concerned about? Is he just going to be able to redo this? Because it's an executive order, it doesn't hold the water you would think it would, or the weight that you think it would carry.
Yeah, quick lesson on this. We teach in all of our Constitution classes. There are constitutional executive orders, and then there are unconstitutional executive orders. It's constitutional if it's executing the law, which is the Article 2 duty of the president, executing the law that the Congress passed. And a lot of times they give a lot of wiggle room for what the president can do and how they're going to implement the law. So they do executive orders to make sure the bureaucracy, the fourth branch, is implementing it correctly. Something like this is literally creating a policy, doing something Congress has not told him to do, and should never give one person the authority to be able to take something like this off the table for the free market, for national security, for all the other reasons that you would want to drill. So Trump will, I fully expect him to just reverse it with an executive order. That's one thing you can do. It's kind of the tit for tat. That's why you don't really want to make law this way, because, every 4 years or 8 years, it would just go back and forth across the tennis court. And in this case, that's exactly what President Trump will do. He'll probably do this as much as anyone since, Calvin Coolidge, in terms of reversing the presidential orders of the president before him. And so I think he's going to show up on day one, guys, with a stack of reversing executive orders, but also a stack of good executive orders that are, in fact, constitutional, implementing and executing laws Congress has passed in the past that President Biden was refusing to actually implement, including, of course, sealing our border and building that wall.
So, Rick, who takes care of all of that? That Trump's got a list of stuff right now that he's, like you said, he's with. Who handles getting all that together? Who does that?
He's got a whole team of well-experienced attorneys that have come out of DOJ in the past, and others that have been in industry. They know exactly how these things need to be worded to do it right. He actually was ahead of the game even in 2016. It was one of the few areas that he actually was ahead of the game. Most of it, he was learning a lot, which is why I'm glad in the long run, all things work together for good for those who love the Lord, right? That he didn't win in 2020, because he's going in so much more prepared in 2024. But his level of preparation on these executive orders is going to shock people. The teams that are preparing this, and frankly have been working on this for well over a year, almost 2 years, they were looking to this day to prepare for it. And then, of course, from the time he actually won the election in November, just like a hockey stick curve, the preparation at that point. So anyway, there's a whole team preparing that. I think we're going to be very impressed at 12:01 on January 20th.
All right, let me show you this from CNN discussing Joe Biden in his mental fitness. Watch.
Of course, to admit it now would be to effectively be admitting one of the biggest cover-ups in modern American political history. Democrat politicians lied. Democrat pundits lied. A lot of people who cover the White House looked the other way or believed absolute crap they were being fed by the White House press secretary.
I'm not disagreeing.
Cheap fakes.
Yeah.
So you think about the pantheon of people who were engaged in the lying, believing the lying, or the cover-up itself. To admit it now would be to say, you know what, America, we did try to pull the wool over your eyes and you weren't buying it. I mean, I guess I understand why keeping up the charade now, to some degree, because to admit it now would be to admit this massive, huge cover-up.
And it would also be to, kick a guy when he's down. I mean, I think we live in the real world. I mean, and this is politics. He's not going to throw Joe Biden all the way under the bus at this stage.
Yeah, you know, I think if that debate hadn't happened, Joe Biden would have probably still been at the top of the ticket in November. But that debate was telling, and I think anybody who watched it, we all were shocked. We were all also very sad and hurt. I mean, it was hard to watch someone who I've worked for
Me too.
be in that condition. I'll also say, I saw the president a month ago, and he's like, "Where you been all day?" You know, it's like, so.
We have good days and bad days.
Yeah.
Okay, let me talk about this debate, because they talk about this debate like there was a sudden, revealing of his mental condition. I thought he did absolutely normal during his debate performance there back in the summer. So what was telling to me, Ed, in all of this was, as I think I was texting Rick at the time, as we were watching the response, as soon as the debate was over, how often all of these news media, they had already turned on Joe Biden. This was already done. They already had their talking points. They already had, so the fact his performance, while it wasn't stellar, that's correct, it wasn't a shock to anybody that's been watching all along. So to blame this on a debate performance, I think is wrong. I think this was just, the debate is what they wanted to have happen. If you remember, the debate was late in the evening. It was like 9 o'clock. I mean, he was set up for failure, and he actually did pretty good considering his mental state to do as well as he did. But this was a setup from the beginning. Or do you disagree? Let me get your take, Ed.
You know, I think the one super interesting point, by the way, just coming out of that video, is the Scott Jennings phenomenon. So you have CNN, which has been historically way left-leaning, and they'll have a panel of 5 or 6 people, and every single person on the panel completely agrees with whatever leftist ideology is going down. And then all of a sudden, Scott Jennings shows up, who not only can speak the truth, but really knows how to bring it in the debate, and actually loops, Gene, back to our first discussion today about Facebook and the changes made in Facebook. CNN saw the writing on the wall. They lost viewership. They lost trust, frankly, even amongst their most faithful people, because they knew they were disparaging the party line. And that, by the way, that happened right after June of 2024, too. So it was interesting seeing this whole curve of things begin to change. I watched the debate. I was in El Salvador, actually, at the time, watching on this retreat that I was down there on. And I was shocked, by the way, at the performance. What I thought was interesting is every time you have a moment like this, like, for example, right after the election in 2024, I mean, literally right after the election, you have this moment of honesty amongst the mainstream media. And I thought it was very refreshing to see even people like the folks on Morning Joe being very honest, frankly, about the president's condition. That goes away very, very quickly. But I thought it was very interesting. And again, it speaks to you, the viewer, the listener, to you taking your eyeballs in your pocketbook someplace else. That makes change in this world. And I'm impressed in what's happened, even in the last year. What do you think, Pastor Hank? You seen this? You heard what Ed said?
Yeah.
Let me get your take. You've been quiet.
Well, first and foremost is, I just love watching their discord, like they're all so shocked. It's the biggest cover-up ever. Well, listen, there's a reason why they say hindsight is 20/20. And what they don't realize is God, the Most High, has not let 2020 and the nonsense, the lying, the thievery out of his sight, out of his heart, and justice is being served. And it's the reason why after the 2020 election that God, in regards to this, administration of Biden, God called it the fake administration. He said 46 doesn't exist, because there's a lot of cover-up that's happened. There's a lot of fake that's gone on. And what people want, and they're finding out to their own hurt, these major broadcast channels and such, and these politicians, they're realizing there's consequences, as I said, to lying. It doesn't pay. And now suddenly they're all like, well, golly, what's going on? Well, the truth of the matter is the truth is exposing the lies. And it's only going to continue to get more intense, because God said there's a divine reset happening. That's why we're talking about Greenland. God said the nations would be reset. You're going to see it. But he also talked about, to this point here, great reversals. And you're going to see it even where those that once believed certain things are going to shift and come over to the way of truth.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, before we get into their next topic, I want to remind you, we will be right there in balmy, warm Omaha, Nebraska, January 30th and 31st at the Lord of Hosts Church for FlashPoint Next Level. And you see right there on the screen, Pastor Hank, Lance Wallnow, Tony Suarez, Rick Green, and me, of course. But listen, hey, Pastor Hank, why did you feel like it was important for us to do this event? Let's talk about that.
Well, because one of the greatest things that you can do when God brings a great victory, answers prayer, brings us through a harsh season, and sets us up for winning, is you give thanks, and you should honor him. And I felt like, and I want all of those that are watching FlashPoint Army, come on, we have all stood, we have all fought, we have all seen a measure of hardship over these last few years, and we must do what the one leper did when he turned around from the other 9 lepers. He gave thanks for what the Lord did, and the Lord noted it, and he got a higher blessing because he returned and gave thanks. And Gene, to answer your question, I just feel like we need to take a moment where we gather as the FlashPoint Army and literally give thanks and honor to God. And then what we need to do is, there's some people that went through some battle wounds. They need to get prayed for, and we're going to do that on Friday night. We are going to pray personally for people. We are going to minister by the Holy Spirit, and people are going to be reset for the great reset. So come on out, register immediately. Can't wait to see in our new tabernacle, by the way.
Yeah, it's beautiful room. You want to be there. So, Rick, we talked about naming this FP Next Level, and the reason for that is, and there was a discussion about this even today, about FlashPoint for the last 4 years has been about taking our nation back. So here we are. We're coming into a new year. We've got a new president. And things are looking up. They're looking positive that we are pulling our nation back in a lot of ways, back to where it's supposed to be, the way our founding fathers intended for it to be. But that means we have to take things to the next level in how we approach culture, government, and our involvement. Speak to that, Rick.
Yeah, because, you can't live on last year's manna, and we have to recognize that God's doing something new in America, and we're blessed to get to be a part of it at this point, and so it's new wineskins. And so I think what people are going to find for these 2 nights in Omaha is, okay, what do we do in this new chapter of America? We've worked so hard in playing defense over the last few years to try to stop the Marxists, to stop the censorship, to stop the, literally preventing people from living out their faith. And so now that we've been given permission by the people in this country to rebuild the walls and to lay the bricks and the foundation and bring back that foundation that made America great, we got to know how to do that. And we've said this many times on FlashPoint, but it's a spiritual battle, and therefore we need to get right spiritually and be ready to make sure that we're following God's orders for this new chapter and that we're in line with his perfect will. So we know how to kind of put the pieces together of rebuilding the walls, the foundations that the founding fathers gave us, but we want to make sure that we're doing it right in the way that God wants us to do it in 2025. So I'm so excited about this, and I'm really excited about people getting to see Hank and Brenda's new place. It's incredible, it's gorgeous, beautiful. And it's going to be an amazing gathering. People are going to be energized, and I think what Hank was saying, they're going to be healed from a lot of the pain of the last few years as well.
Amen. All right, so Tony, when I asked you, you jumped on this. Why did you jump on wanting to be a part?
Because of the victory that we're celebrating and the victory we're going to continue having. This goes back even to what we were talking about at the beginning with FlashPoint, or with Facebook. Sometimes people ask me, what is FlashPoint? It's not a television program. It's a movement, and it's a movement that has gained the respect of the nation. I think some of the things that we've seen with CNN and other media is because they're respecting us. But what we need to do at this next level is prove that this is not an anomaly. This wasn't just a one-time thing. We're going to go from glory to glory, victory to victory. We're not satisfied just with this election. We're still pressing on towards revival, seeing the gospel preached more than what we've seen through media, and then we're focused on the midterm. We are going to prove to the left that they must respect the church and respect the conservative movement. This isn't just a one-time victory. We continue going on. So when I heard about it, I said, absolutely, I want to support it. I want to be there. I want to celebrate in that beautiful tabernacle in Omaha on Sunday. I don't remember why it came to me in a sermon, but I called it the Taj Mahal of Nebraska. So everyone get to the Taj Mahal of Omaha to celebrate what the Lord is doing.
I wouldn't have called it that because, well, anyway, Taj Mahal of Omaha.
Moving right along.
Moving
It's
right
not
along.
on the teleprompter.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, read it off the prompter. So let me explain something. The guys will be there Thursday night, like Pastor Hank was saying, and we will cover a lot. We will celebrate. We will see what God's done. We'll talk about things that we need to be working on. That's the W word I was looking for. Things that we need to be working on and how we go to the next level in all of our lives, wherever we live. And then on Friday night, very special time, Pastor Hank and I are going to minister back to you personally. So I want to see, you'll be able to see me in a little bit different light. You recognize Pastor Hank in that light, but we get to spend some time ministering back to you. So I want to see you there. And so be a part. It's absolutely free. Just go register if you don't mind. Let us know you're coming. fpnextlevel.com. And you go, well, it's snow and it's cold up there. Listen, if there's snow, Omaha knows how to deal with the snow. Unlike the southern states where I'm from, they have the equipment to deal with it. So don't worry about that. It'll all be fine. And come join us right there in Omaha.